Hello everyone, welcome back. You know, one of the things that I've mentioned on this channel in the past is the idea of consenting to be governed. You have two schools of thought on this. You have the thought that says, do not turn up, do not consent to the system. I disagree with that, because if you don't consent to the system, that system will then continue regardless and will do what they like. You can see evidence of that in 2010 when we ended up with that stinking coalition between Nick Clegg and David Cameron. I'm sure we all remember that. Or you have the other school of thought that says you must turn up and you must either consent to the system by voting for somebody, i.e., the representative of the party that you want to govern you, or you do not consent, effectively spoiling your ballot. Now, when you spoil your ballot, you have to do it in a very particular way. You have to write on it, I do not consent, Ashby versus White, 1703. And the reason you have to do this, you can't just write fuck off or load of rubbish or something like that, because it will not count. You have to write Ashby versus White, 1703. And the reason for that is because of the case that represents. There was a case, Ashby versus White, 1703, whereby a gentleman wanted to go and vote in an election and he was told he couldn't. And this gentleman decided to sue because the government, or the person that told him he couldn't, had effectively taken away his right to vote. And the eventual ruling, of course, I'm cutting right to the end for the sake of time, but the eventual ruling basically formed a very, very major underpinning part of the way in which we give our consent to be governed. In other words, you can either give it or not give it at the polling booth. You have to turn up and vote. Now, when I've spoken about spoiling your papers and everything before, people have gone, oh no, don't do that, waste of time. Well, it actually isn't. If you have a look at this picture here, this is the ballot count from, I think it's Dublin North West. It's an election that's taken place over the last couple of days. And you will see two very important boxes there. You will see the person who got the most votes, and right at the bottom you will see spoilt votes. And the number of spoilt votes outnumbers, not by much, but outnumbers the number of votes for the next nearest person who was voted for. So in other words, the spoilt votes have won. What people are saying is, we don't want to be governed by you. We've had enough of it. This is what happens, and what you get in effect, you get a crisis has been caused, because the populace, in this case the Irish, are turning around and saying, now we've had enough. We don't want you to govern. I do not consent. Very powerful, and it's something that many people dismiss. I'm going to play you a video now, a couple of minutes long, of the reaction to this, and it really explains it well.
Well, good morning. It's early on the day of the vote count for the presidential election, and it is clear that there has been a behemoth spoil the vote. This is seismic for the political establishment, which did not see this coming, just as they didn't see it coming last year during the constitutional referendum. But more importantly, it's also a massive rebuke to the mainstream media in Ireland. Just read them today. None of them saw this coming. None of them. That's because they are part of the bubble. They are taking the government coin. And what you're seeing is a disconnect between that bubble and a large proportion of the Irish people. This is a substantial problem, potentially a political crisis. It also raises significant questions about the legitimacy of this presidential election, given the way that the political process was jimmied through the local councils and so on. We all know the story at this stage. There is a huge gap after opening up between the Irish people and those that govern them. This has to do with the export of our top talent out of Ireland because they can't afford to live here or get housing here, while we're importing a qualitatively different type of illegal immigrant into Ireland over the last number of years, and all of the issues there, where we can clearly see that the political establishment, aided by the media, are simply involved in messaging. They're not dealing with the underlying problem that is so concerning the Irish people. That is the fundamental problem. And this creates a political crisis for the existing establishment parties, including Sinn Féin. All of them are on the wrong side of this, bar one or two. That is the message that is coming from the people. Spoil the vote is a rebuke, not just to the political establishment, but to the mainstream media as well. I can tell you that I will continue on in counterpoint to have a presence in the massive vacuum created by the desertion of the fourth estate. That's the mainstream media in Q1 2020. More and on. But watch this space. Watch how the shock and the analysis filters out over the next number of days across the political establishment and the mainstream media, because they are now the extreme. The Irish people have moved. That is the Overton window that I keep talking about. The what is acceptable between left and right. That is after shifting. But they're so tied up in their bubble, they didn't see it coming. They didn't see this coming either, did they? What does that tell you about how we're being governed and how we're being led, and what must be done by the Irish people themselves in order to fix this problem? Because that's what must be done if we are to save this nation from the harm that is being visited upon it by the way this government is translating orders from above through to the management of the Irish people and its economy and its society. It is simply not acceptable, and the message clearly from Spoil the Vote is we've had enough of it. Enough.
See, I hope you've understood what I'm saying, and I hope you've understood what he says in that video. It's very, very important. I mean, if you look at elections that we've had over the last 20 or 30 years, historically, the turnout has been crap. It's been awful. No, I think 40% stay at home regularly. That's no good. So you need to really start talking to your families, your friends, your loved ones, people you're down a pub with where politics is often spoken about, anything. And you need to get people to engage with the system, because at the end of the day, you have a right to either give your consent by lending your vote and therefore your sovereignty to your representative, or you do not consent, but you have to say it at that ballot box. And if, like we've seen in this case, the number of spoils outweighs the number of votes to the next nearest, then we have a problem. And as you've seen in that video there, where I've explained it to you and he's explained it to you, they quite literally do not know what to do about this. It's something nobody saw coming. It's something the mainstream didn't see coming, something the political class didn't see coming. And they have to sort it out. At the end of the day, Ireland have got massive, massive problems with regard to migration, people leaving because there's not the opportunities and various other things. And overall, it's just far too expensive to live there. All of the things that you've heard. And eventually people, of course, those that have been left behind will say, nah, had enough of this. And you get the situation you have there. The same will happen in England. The same will happen in Wales. And, the same will happen in Scotland too. Enough is enough. You must get people engaged. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Share this around because it's kind of important. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, I look forward to talking to you soon. Toodaloo.